All right, so let's continue on. So we left off with this kind of mini cliffhanger where Charles the First had really ticked off the Parliament, and not a surprise, when they get back, there's going to be a guy who's going to be really upset with him, and this is going to lead to a full-out civil war inside of England. So let's talk about how this develops, and again, all of this is still part of how constitutional monarchy develops in England. So here's some key words. We're talking about a man named Oliver Cromwell, who we're gonna get into in a second, and he's the same time as Charles the First, so kind of in that 1640s time period is when we're gonna see him come into time period, right? And he's gonna then we'll talk about a man named Charles II, James II, Glorious Revolution, William and Mary, Bill of Rights. I'm gonna explain all these terms again. You can pause, get them down if you need, and then make sure you know everything I say about them as we move forward. So, what exactly is going to happen, and who is this guy named Oliver Cromwell? Because Oliver Cromwell is one of the key figures as to how constitutional monarchy develops in England and what happens. So, Oliver Cromwell, there he is. Oliver Cromwell over here was a military man. And Oliver Cromwell decided he was going to lead a war, a revolt against Charles. This leads to a bloody, bloody civil war inside of England. It goes on from about 1642 to 1648. And sometimes I think in your textbook it's described as two separate wars because at one point in the war, apparently Charles the First says, I'll be good. And Oliver Cromwell says, okay. And then Charles says, just kidding. And then he captures him a second time. And eventually, Charles the First is going to be killed. Oliver Cromwell is going to have Charles the First killed. And so the King of England is dead now. The Stuart family line is still around, mind you, but the King of England is dead. And now this guy named Cromwell becomes the new leader of England. He becomes kind of this de facto leader of England, and there's no monarch. And is this a constitutional monarch? And the answer is not yet, right? There's a magical date. We're going to get to 1688. When we get to 1688, that's when England really is a constitutional monarch, and we're not there yet. Because, as it turns out, once Oliver Cromwell comes into power, guess what? He becomes more authoritarian, some people argue, than any of the Stuart family line. He doesn't really share power. There was, in fact, this other word that I want you to know, there's levelers. These other group of people who really advocated for more rights in England, more voting rights, and so forth. And he went after them. He didn't allow them to have a voice. At what point he's going to dissolve Parliament as well. And again, always important. Don't just write down the key words. Know what I'm saying about all these key words, because if you have an idea on Cromwell, you have to be able to explain all this, right? Um, what else? He fought a brutal, brutal war up in Ireland, killed a lot of people up there. So that was an issue as well. He took England and he divided England up into all these military districts, and he put his people in charge of all the military districts. So this goes on for several years until eventually Oliver Cromwell dies. And after Oliver Cromwell dies in the 1650s, people look at the situation and go, yeah, all right, well, that didn't work too well. Oliver Cromwell turns out to be just as authoritarian. What are we going to do now? And after some discussions of things, they basically decided, let's bring back the Stuart family. And so we're back to the Stuart family in charge of England now. So here we go, back with the Stuart family, and the question is which one? Well, it's going to be the son of Charles the First, and his name is, of course, Charles the Second. So what's the deal with Charles the Second? Well, Charles the Second, this merry monarch, right? Just his nickname already tells you things are going to be interesting. He had a reputation of, liking the women and having a lot of fun with that, but also, the issue with him was he was just not a good leader. He, alienated a lot of people in England. He was very pro-Catholic, and the issue for England is by now England is Protestant. I mentioned this in the previous lecture. And because England is primarily Protestant, from the perspective of a lot of people in England, of course, the Catholics are going to like him, right? The Protestants aren't. And since England is mainly Protestant, that's going to be an issue. there as well. There's a little bit more detail in your textbook about that. But there's also a big fire in England during his time. In 1666, there's a big fire. And all in all, just it's not a very stable time period. One other quick thing just to mention, this is Charles II. And, you know, a note just as you're taking quizzes or exams or whatever, if on a quiz question, for example, I ask, you know, which king of England was ousted by Oliver Cromwell, and you write Charles, that's not going to be accurate. You have to write Charles the First, right? Because Charles the Second. And so you always want to make sure to include the Roman numeral in your answers, and whether it's a quiz or if you're writing an ID or writing an essay, don't just write Charles, right? Don't just write Henry. You have to have the right ones. And do use the Roman numerals. Don't do something like this. You know, don't write second. That's horrible. Second there. Do the actual Roman numerals. Don't write the word second or first, F-I-R-S-T. Just use the Roman numerals, right? So anyways, that's Charles II. He doesn't have a good reign. He actually ends up spending quite a bit of time in exile out of England. And England is just a mess. And just to give you an idea of how big of a mess things were, remember, this is already after the Civil War, and the Stuart family, and Oliver Cromwell was a mess. Charles II was so not liked, and Charles I was obviously so not liked. I found this interesting story. I'm going to read this to you quick. Today, the Queen of England, this is a quick little side story, but it's funny. Today, the Queen of England is Queen Elizabeth I. I don't think she's ever going to die, but if she ever dies, Queen Elizabeth II, excuse me, I don't think she's ever going to die anyways. You know, there's a picture of Queen Elizabeth II with every president of the United States while she's queen since Eisenhower. It's just crazy. This woman's been around forever. But as of 2022, she's still alive here. And the whole issue is when she dies, she's going to be replaced by her son. Her son is Prince Charles. And the name Charles is so toxic in British history. This is what I read a few years back. Let me read this to you. Prince Charles has reportedly discussed rejecting the title of King Charles III when he ascends to the throne because of the association with Britain's bloody past. And then he goes on to say that Charles, where is it? He said, it says Prince Charles, whose full name is Charles Philip Arthur George, is said to favor the title of George VII when he takes over from his mother, current Queen Elizabeth II. So the name is so toxic, Charles, whether it was Charles I who tried to be absolute or Charles II with a merry monarch, that nobody even wants that name anymore. So I just thought that was funny. So anyway, 1685, he dies, right? Now what? Well, his power falls not to his son, but to his brother. And the brother of Charles II is a man named James II. And look at the date, 1685. We're almost at when constitutional monarchy develops. So again, all of these are the triggers that are eventually going to get us to constitutional monarchy. In 1685, this man named James II becomes the new monarch of England. And James II once again comes in and says, I want to rule in an absolute manner. And the people in England, the parliament, are like, not this again, right? And he is, again, Catholic, supporting a lot of the Catholics. And people in England were like, oh boy, what do we do? Do we fight him off again? Do we have another civil war? The one with Charles was very bloody, Charles I. What are we going to do? And so what the nobles decide initially is James is kind of old. And James had a daughter, and these are some important words here you're going to see here. A daughter named Mary, right here, Mary. And Mary was married to a man named William and Mary. And so William and Mary were both Protestants. And what the thinking was is that when James II dies, and James II was a bit older by now, because he was the brother, remember, not the son. And so when James II dies, they figure, well, William and Mary will take over. They're Protestants. We can work with them. Let's not have a brutal civil war. That was the plan, all right? That was in 1685. 1685, 1686, 1687. I'm sure the nobles are like, is he dead yet? Is he dead yet? Is he dead yet? We get to 1688. 1688, James II decides that he's going to go and have another child. He does, and he has another boy. Now, the moment he has a boy, that throws the whole thing into a mess. Why? Well, in the British line of succession back then, it was the eldest son who inherited. Today, it's actually the eldest child. By the way, they just changed that about less than 10 years ago, I think. But back then, it was the eldest son. So Mary was his eldest daughter. But when the moment he has a son, that son is going to be the next king. It doesn't matter that Mary is much older than him. That young baby eventually is going to be the monarch. And if that young baby is now going to be influenced by people who James II, he has more influence and control, it's a wild card. You don't know what's going to happen. So the moment he has the son, the nobles say, okay, we can't take a chance of this Stuart family going down this path. And so what they do is they now revolt. And this is where you get the Glorious Revolution of 1688. And I always say you don't need to memorize dates, but this is called the Glorious Revolution of 1688, and it's followed by what we call the Bill of Rights of 1688, so you definitely want to know all this. And so what essentially happens is the nobles go to William and Mary, and they tell William and Mary, hey guys, how would you like to be the monarchs of England? We're going to overthrow your dad. And they're like, cool, all right, I'd like to be monarch. So William and Mary agreed to be the new monarchs of England, and the reason it's sometimes called the Glorious Revolution is that it's not super bloody. James actually ends up fleeing. He doesn't put up a fight. He doesn't have a lot of supporters. I think people are kind of tired with most of the Stuart family, and you go, well, Mary's part of the Stuart family as well. Yes, but this is the big point, and this is the pivotal moment that England becomes a constitutional monarchy, right? So this is the part you definitely want to focus on. So when William and Mary agree to be monarchs, the nobles tell them, you guys can be monarchs, but, you have to promise, you're not going to be absolute monarchs. And William and Mary say, sure, no problem. And then the nobles say, we want it in writing. And when they say we want it in writing, William and Mary agree. And they agree to a document known as the Bill of Rights of 1688, which I'm going to go over in a second here with you. So this is the deal. To understand the development of constitutional monarchy, I believe I put a chart in your modules. And it's got, you basically need to know all the monarchs, right? The death of Elizabeth, and then you're just going to go. James I, Charles I, Oliver Cromwell, the story of Charles II, James II, and then the acceptance of William and Mary. All of those are events that what helps bring about a constitutional monarchy. That's the cause, right? That's the how. Then you need to know what is a constitutional monarchy. And all I've said up to this point, well, it's not absolute. They have to share power. Who do they share power with? Well, the nobles and Parliament. And what are the characteristics? Well, I'm not going to go and lecture to you now on all the characteristics of a constitutional monarchy. So you're going to, how am I supposed to learn about it? Well, you're going to learn about the characteristics of constitutional monarchy by reading the Bill of Rights of 1688. So I'm just going to hold this up for a second. This is your textbook, right? And in your textbook, you have these primary sources. And if you look at chapter 15 in your textbook, you can find it there. And, you can always even Google this if you need to, honestly. You can find the Bill of Rights of 1688, and you can read it. And as you read the Bill of Rights of 1688, that primary source, what you need to be able to do is not memorize every single point in there, but what you need to be able to do is be able to take that document and essentially summarize it in a paragraph and tell me these are the limits towards the King of England, right? And what William and Mary agreed to. Because when we talk about absolute monarchy, well, see, there was nothing that checked the power of an absolute monarchy. But in the sense of a constitutional monarchy, there was. And what that thing was that Bill of Rights of 1688. So you want to be able to explain it. And that's what I mean that makes a constitutional monarchy a constitutional monarchy. All right, I hope that's clear. If you have any problems with it, you could read it. You could, ask me. I'm happy to go over it with you. But I want you to give it a go and just read the document and say, oh, okay, I get it. And especially this lecture is going to go with the next lectures on absolute monarchy. Because when you cover absolute monarchy, you'll get a sense of there's nothing that checks the power of the king. So kind of these few lectures on constitutional monarchy, absolute monarchy, they all go together. You can watch them in parts and stuff, of course, but it's like painting a picture, and once you kind of go through the whole thing, you get, oh, now I get why this is one way and this is another way. All right, so I hope all that's clear. These couple lectures on constitutional monarchy. Again, you want to know absolute monarchy. That's coming up next. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. And that's it. Make sure you took a lot of good notes on this. You can always go back and listen to it again. I hope it's all clear, and just let me know if you have any questions. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.